Hello, dear ladies and gentlemen. So we're ready to continue the work of our forum. We are quite surprised how many people have found a way through these ways to found our panel discussion. But we'll try to make our roundtable very interesting, as around the table we have very unique people, those who determine the infrastructure of the city on a daily basis, and whose work, this intangible work, makes this infrastructure very efficient. We have got used to the fact that getting up today in the morning, you look at your smartphone, you check the weather forecast, you decide whether to use metro, Moscow Central Ring, the taxi, you take the public transport, you come up to the station, you see that there are 3 minutes to the trolley bus, you just check in the Wi-Fi, you come up to your work. This is seamless infrastructure which is around us. This is the achievement by all those companies and my colleagues who are present here. I'd like to introduce Artem Yermolaev, the Minister of Moscow Government, Department of Information Technologies. Then Mikhail Asievsky, Rostelecom company, the symbol of our infrastructure and the backbone which we are dependent on in terms of realization for the project. Alexander Auzan, Moscow State University, the Dean of the Faculty of Economics. And we are going to talk with Alexander about the business models which are developed in the cities, the agglomeration, the metropolises, and which all the business models make very effective. I'd like to introduce Gerard Nistrale, the distinguished head of board of ENGIE, the president of ENGIE Foundation, and Edward Tinder, the vice president in the sector of state and public services, global sector solutions, Huawei company. So today we have the infrastructure which cannot be done without the representative of the mobile operators, Svetlana Skvartsova, the director for the strategic planning of Tele2 company, and Anna Serebrennikov, the operation chief of Megaphone company. And of course, we cannot do without banks. Pochta Bank, Anastasia Maslenikov, the board member, and Vladimir Zotov, VTB Bank, Global Transactional Services, Olga Zinganova, the deputy head responsible for the transformation, digital transformation in global bank infrastructure. So Artem, so where should we move forward to? Everything works in the city. Everything is so comfortable. The Muscovites are quite satisfied. According to all the rating, Moscow is among top 10 as the smart cities ratings. Nevertheless, the tasks and challenges which you set to your team, the priorities you set to your team, makes us expect next steps. Which area do you see further development in terms of the smart city development as the client? Which requirements do you set to your partners, and who are the main partners in this kind of development for you? Thank you, Olga, for the opportunity to speak and to talk about further steps. Of course, there are some orders of Sergei Semyonovich how to develop the new strategy and the smart city program, the smart Moscow program. This strategy has been under the discussion, the public discussion, since April this year. And this program actually covers all the areas of Muscovites, 6 main areas. The human and social capital, everything connected with education, culture, Medicare. This is the comfortable city itself, the utilities and construction, the mobile city, everything connected with the transportation, information, digital technologies. This is the security and eco-friendliness and the city economy. All these areas are quite through areas. And the task in all these areas to perfect, making use 8 through technologies which we anticipate in terms of development. And the main task is to focus on the artificial intelligence development and implementation. We do understand that currently the city, using all these services you have mentioned already in the morning, collecting huge amount of information and data, which is not possible for the human brain to analyze. That's why we invest quite hugely in making use of artificial intelligence, both in education, utility, and other areas. There are a number of complementary technologies which, within the framework of smart city development, are going to facilitate our development. This is development of infrastructure, this is conduction. As for the artificial intelligence, it is necessary to provide constant interaction and interaction with the Internet of Things. But this is going to be amount of data facilitating decision-making for the artificial intelligence, all the areas which I have mentioned already. Therefore, there is a number of through technologies we are going to use in all these areas. And the main task and the goal is to make the life of Muscovites easier, thanks to new information technologies. The second goal is to give an opportunity the machine to make decisions even to a bigger extent, as it can analyze it faster and to a more quality level, regardless of the mood. And the third goal is to do everything closely with the business sectors. Our main goal, making the life of Muscovites easier and more comfortable. How can we do that? To try to give the resource, the time resource. So our task is to increase the spare time for the person, and give an opportunity for the person to live more comfortable, to spend more time on family and on human communication and interaction. Combination with the business sector gives us the breakthrough solution. As of today, together with Michał or with you, we are trying to achieve that you're going to tell them about your contribution. Michał wants to tell how fast internet is provided. And I would like to tell them that using this TV channel, internet, or VTB credit card, you can pay duty for the service implementation, but we are working separately. Everyone is trying to address to the Muscovite and try to say to listen to me. That's why it's not working quite efficiently. The Muscovites are quite demanding and they want everything at once. Our task is to combine our efforts, implement the smart city, making use of this artificial intelligence. So answering your question, what is going to be in the foreseeable future? In the foreseeable future, we are going to see different level thanks to information technologies. We're going to focus on data, infrastructure, artificial intelligence, and many other things. But we're going to do it together with business sector. And in this respect, we set some requirements to the business sector. We need not the relations of the customer and the supplier, but the partner for the city, the partner who is going to co-investment in the marketplace, in their niche to develop together. So the city is investing in backend, and the business sector is working with the Muscovite, giving the services in the interface which are quite common to the Muscovites. That's why we have seen the emergence on the Yandex map, the public transport. My daughter says to me how great it is that Yandex has this kind of service. So nobody knows that before this service appearance, we had emerged the GLONASS meters on all the transportation system to provide the signal. We are quite satisfied with the Muscovites being satisfied. That is our main task. And the principle of the partnership with the business, you invest in like we do. And your goal is the Muscovite himself. And if our desire and the goals are compatible, so we can move forward together. So Artem, you have mentioned a couple of very interesting things, that the requirement of a Muscovite is the imperative priority you're going to follow, and how you follow is the huge investment which is provided by the city. And then you look for the business partner model, which can give the particular foundation for your cooperation. So you do set priorities for yourself. Maybe it's comfortable and then profitable. Maybe it's profitable and quite secure. What is your way to opt for the models for partnership? How do you set priorities? Or maybe the technological interest, artificial intelligence going to do everything. You have a data scientist responsible for particular things. But this is implementation in your case. What are the criteria for the choice? The first criteria is the demand level. As We working in different areas, G2C, G2B, G2G. First of all, this is the demand for the particular service, and then the economic feasibility. And it doesn't matter if we are going to apply this artificial intelligence in Medicare, and we have conducted particular tests to predict the cancer tumors, which give the opportunity to economize on the future when we can detect the cancer at the zero first stage. This is going to be cheaper for us. And the artificial intelligence is to work with the routine work of any specialist in any area, and the transformation and shift to a new quality level. The second one is economic feasibility, and the third one is the higher quality of these services, which launches the chain of the economic efficiency. Alexander, the model of partnership which has been implemented by Moscow, working with business, the searching for new niches, investing in new niches, as the partner earns not directly on the investment being allocated, but on this so-called delayed demand. Is it a standard model? Is it innovation? Is it within the framework how the economic idea is developing in terms of the metropolis development? You know, dear ladies and gentlemen, I will start with the fact that we don't have a model in place which would be proved successful. We're at very dangerous terrain where different events might happen. I'd like to continue your analogy, as on the one hand, for the Muscovite, the smart city and electronic city, in the trolleybus we do have Wi-Fi and other things, but this e-city has two disadvantages. First of all, it is not everywhere, as in the radio park, for instance. I just tried to run about 40 minutes. I found only those indicators as a Indian jaw. True, it is creative development. We have huge blind spots, and the second problem is even worse, that it is everywhere, and we know it through the video camera, CCTV cameras, which detect the accidents. This fatal amount of penalties and tickets, and we're trying to understand what they know about us, and they know quite a lot of information about us, which is a great concern for all of us. But from the perspective of the economist, being a Muscovite, talking about the partnership, business and the government of the city, we need to understand which problem we try to tackle. This is not the question of love and friendship between the business and government. This is the question, to what end are we trying to build these relations if we do have the digital economy, digital environment? And I'd like to mention that we are quite deep into that as Moscow State University. Moscow State Emperor University is engaged in the program of electronic industry, smart city. We're quite deep into that. So the main problems look like the following. Talking about the business, on the one hand, we have a huge amount of new opportunities, quite tempting opportunities connected with platform development. Where do we have these opportunity from? Talking about urbanization, there is disintermediation process within huge number of layers. We decrease the operational costs, and you don't have just by 3 or 4% increase in efficiency, but you have about 30-40 increase in productivity. So we see new kind of development, and this new development is quite successful. You've seen the news as of today that the richest person is the Bezos, the Amazon owner. Everything's quite good with the development. So you tackle the problem with the search for information, the processing of information, so on and so forth, the marketplace appearing, and then we have a new infrastructure developed to this respect, what Rostelecom has been engaged in. They have created special services, but there is a negative effect, which was quite unexpected. And this problem should be tackled. And the market mechanism is disappearing, and we see monopolization of the market. The asymmetry of the information emerges connected with the platform development. They have huge data as the what should we do further on? So we believe that the partnership building with the business, with the government, is aimed at the normal regulation retainment. It seems to me that in our Moscow and Russian option, these are consortiums where the stakeholders are trying to design this kind of environment. And, talking about consortium itself is just words, but when there is a holding a management company for a consortium, this is a particular step at the management company, which should divide those who are responsible for the supplying of services and stakeholders who are responsible for the assessment of these services. As the supplier is within the business, you've just launched monopoly of a different kind. And within this combination of consortium with the management companies, with the division of stakeholders' interests, it seems to me that we can try to solve this problem of big effects on the decrease in operational costs, thanks to platform development, to trying to reduce negative effects connected with the monopolization. Of course, I would like to apologize that this effect is not going to be that brilliant. I like to reiterate our statement, which was said by Ms. Alexeyeva, which gives the Kuybyshev theorem that everything is going to be quite all right, but not quite to appropriate level. The question.
Olga, can I ask you a question or a comment to adjust about economic model and motivators for us? So I would like to consider a specific example of an economic model that we implement with video cameras. The system of video cameras installed in the city is huge. It is the largest in the world, and we register a lot of things, but still we are not everywhere. So the digital eye is not everywhere yet, dear Muscovites. No, it is not. But the model that we are implementing and the fact that we get coordinating it with business within video cameras system, we provide for safety within the perimeter where the educational complex is protected and no one can get in without the video cameras. But we do not work inside the premises. For example, in kindergartens, we do not install cameras, and we work with operators, for example, to agree on certain participation. The operator of telecom installs CCTVs inside the premises. On the premises, we pay for that, and the operator has the infrastructure. So they install the video cameras. They agree themselves with the parents that they would collect the money from the parents for that. And my interest in this case is as follows. So I, as a city, get for free the system of monitoring on the premises of the kindergarten to see that the teachers and educators work well. As for the citizens, when they give their children to the kindergarten, they are sure that the children would feel safe and fine and okay, and they can see how they are treated in the kindergarten. And the telecom operator receives money from the citizens that would have paid anyway. So business wins because they get money. I win as a city because I get high-quality service, and I also decrease the net cost of the camera that is off the premises because I tell my colleagues, as you get the money there, you give me the discount here. So therefore, I get the discount, get additional services, and satisfied citizen. So that is the partnership that we work in. We cut costs and drive new services and move on. I believe that this synergy is to a certain extent unique, as you have a lot of contractors, several dozens of thousands of contractors that you work regularly with. And that is an inevitable need to balance the interests between large business and small business. But still, when we talk about large infrastructure solutions, it would be hard to expect small business representatives sitting at this table. Therefore, we have largest federal operator and largest telecom operator, largest banks of the country. But going back to the business model, Mikhail Eduardovich, you are the backbone, the bus that the interaction of all the components of a smart city cannot live without. Are you satisfied with this interaction and business model? You are the federal operator. You work with the constituent entities of the Russian Federation, and you provide the service right to the very end point, the customer, the citizen. Does this business model work? Are you satisfied? So I will start with the end. Yes, we are satisfied. But I would suggest starting with a glossary first. Because in my understanding, in narrow understanding, the smart city term means a governmental system of resources and services management. But I believe that a smart city has also a wider, more philosophical understanding. That is a city where the inhabitants, the business, and the government actively generate information and consume this information. And for this information to be distributed, stored, and processed, we need infrastructure. But this infrastructure should cater for the interests of all those who exist in the city. So I believe that that is the target setting that we start with together with my colleagues when we initiate our work. So that is our business interests and combining our business interests in servicing the citizens, businesses, and providing products and services. And an obvious trend of the recent years is the government that is going away from direct investment and coming to the service model. And that is something that is being actively implemented in Moscow. A lot of information is stored in data centers that are put up by Rostelecom and developed by Rostelecom. Naturally, it lifts the one-time load on the budget and makes the public side more effective and mobile, and we have a lot of examples of this. Naturally, what is important in smart city is infrastructure. And there are a lot of opportunities to monetize different projects, and we will speak about it at the end, I believe, and it is seen vividly in Moscow. But what is critical here is that Moscow is not the only city in this country. We have to admit, we know St. Petersburg as well, and another 11 cities of FIFA World Cup. Well, Moscow is way ahead of my beloved St. Petersburg, the level of its development and understanding of where it is moving, and it is even farther ahead of other cities. But people in these cities would also like to have other opportunities to be able to live in other conditions. So together with the Moscow government and Ministry of Construction of the Russian Federation, we now work on smart cities in our digital economy program, and we believe that it is really crucial to get the experience, products, and technologies that we have elaborated here in Moscow to promote them actively in other cities. Otherwise, we will have one and a half or a couple of smart cities where everyone would seek to. Alexei has mentioned today that we need huge agglomerates in Siberia and in the Urals, because otherwise we will have one huge hyper-agglomerate of Moscow and Moscow region that would drive smoothly to St. Petersburg. So bearing in mind the scale and the scope of Russia and the fact that over 50% of population lives in the cities, this transfer of technologies is really something paramount. And we, as the national operator, would like to scale up these technologies in other cities and introduce them actively there. So everything that turns up here should turn up there as well sometime later. And I would like to support Mikhail saying that what is done in Moscow should be scaled up, because otherwise what we can face is as follows. One of the governors said a year ago that they demolish in Moscow something that we are going to build in our regions. So when we have this gap, we are facing a serious danger. And according to our calculations and estimates that in our strategic research center we have done, if we do not drive this process, the agglomerate will be on the line of Krasnodar, Rostov-on-Don, and St. Petersburg. That will be 90% of the country's population, and everything beyond the Urals and the Volga River will be unpopulated at all if we do not deal with this process. So it will not be good at all. Therefore, I support this idea. And though yes, we are willing to make further steps here in Moscow, but we should make them in such a way that we should get certain scaling up to other cities. And colleagues, you have to understand that the role of Moscow is also to help the other regions avoid the mistakes that we have made. Because we have looked at a lot of business processes that just do not do not continue and cannot be launched. For example, we have discussed Uberization, and I believe that that is a stage that we have passed already. We do not need it anymore. And we understand that blockchain technologies now eliminate even the digital intermediary. So we should not invest into that, but work in another direction. And what we are doing now, we have understood that what has been launched already here should be given in open source together with the description, so that the other cities can get it and implement it. And we can use high-tech companies, and not only Rostelecom, but all our telecom companies do not live without power supply. And we have discussed it with Rosseti, and we understand that it is not a smaller player which is also interested in providing other services together with power supply to users. And we are ready to share our best practices. And I would like to add something here as well. In this good wish of ours to spread it everywhere, we should not forget that the level of budget cover really is different from region to region. And to implement a lot of things that are done in Moscow, we need to look at the opportunities of the regions. And I would also like to ask our experts how innovations help work not only in Moscow, but also beyond. Anna Serebrennikova, Megaphone, which is well known for their innovative solutions. Do we have a mic? Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to get into the discussion between Mikhail and Artyom on the topic that it is more interesting and better to pilot something in Moscow. On the one hand, I agree, but on the other hand, like Artyom is correctly mentioning, some solutions that are deemed implemented in Moscow 3-5 years ago are innovations to a lot of regions. And Moscow is way ahead not only because of the budget and because it is a huge market for all operators, but also because Moscow has never felt afraid of cooperation. Moscow was the first to tell us operators to come and install base stations without any pay and so on and so forth, whereas in other regions these processes are much slower. And when Moscow does make this step, it is easier for us to say to other regions, have a look, they have tried and nothing bad has happened, so you can also move in this direction. And the fact that you help commercial companies and organizations to grow and develop helps us both. So that is a two-way road, and I'm not sure about the open source and whether it can be applied in another territory without integrator. I believe some integrator work has to be done. But the fact that the main steps, both political and economic, that Moscow is making, they should be scaled up, and this should be supported. Because a barrier for us is market size and budget, because we, as commercial organizations, calculate money. But Anna, what do you bring to the regions? What do you tell them about Moscow? So, smart cities is developing now actively, and photo and video registration for a lot of Russian regions that is either present that they are investing in or the future. And we are naturally bringing all these areas forward. And the pilot projects that we are doing in the fifth generation, and yesterday, for example, we reported on World Cup and pilot projects on 5G, it is clear that it is not only the cities that will benefit from these services, because large industrial companies and enterprises that are not located in Moscow but in the regions would also benefit from that. So that is already the matter of their readiness and willingness to introduce vertically these IT solutions that can be tested in Moscow and further on scaled up in the regions. And today, for example, at our booth, we demonstrate remote ultrasound examination when you can get data in hospital from the equipment that you install in some remote areas, and then you can respond fast to some emergencies. And naturally, we need to pilot these technologies with the leaders, but it also means that the government has to help introduce these technologies all around the country. Anna, thank you very much, and I cannot but ask my question to another expert, Anastasia Maslenko from Pochta Bank. You are well known for actively developing the whole territory of the Russian Federation. So innovations of smart city and banks, are they possible in the regions? Thank you, Olga. And I should naturally participate in this discussion. We are present not only in towns, but also in villages and other remote rural areas. And smart town and smart villages is an interesting concept. And the decision of Moscow to have all these innovations in open source, I believe, is something interesting. But there is also another path, that is a new biometric system launch, and smart city services can go to citizens of rural areas via the internet, and it would be great if these services could take place. We have made a serious step to certain, let's call it, digital passport of a Russian citizen, with the help of which they can obtain a lot of services remotely. And there is one service of this kind in banking, that is when you open your banking account remotely with the help of this uniform biometric system, when a citizen of some rural area can open an account in a bank that is located hundreds or even thousands kilometers away from them. So the more services like this we have in banking and other spheres, the easier it will be to say that elements of smart cities go rural. And as for the infrastructure for digital passports, we're going to build it up, but now we have 128 points in Pochta Bank, and by the end of the year it will be 400, and in the future it can be 18,000 of points of sales where we are present. We can say that national biometric system infrastructure is also about safety of data. And now let me ask Gérard Mistral, the representative of the company that decided to invest into development of one of the Russian regions and build an element of a smart city in New Moscow. Gerard, why did you decide to do so, and how fast do you expect the return on your investment? And afterwards, I would also ask you about the priorities that you have included into your project.
Thank you, Olga. Good morning, everyone, Mr. Minister. First, a few words on ENGIE and SUEZ, which are not well known here in Russia. ENGIE and SUEZ are linked in capital. Have been chairman and CEO of ENGIE in energy for 20 years. And ENGIE is in the energy sector, power, gas, energy services. We are, by the way, the largest single buyer of Russian gas in the world. And SUEZ is present in environment, water, and waste. ENGIE $70 billion and 150,000 people, and SUEZ 100,000 people. So we are, very used to work with municipalities in 70 different countries and with 3,000 municipalities in the world, in power distribution, gas distribution, district heating, cooling, clean water distribution, wastewater treatment, street lighting, CCTVs, like in Paris, for example, and public building energy management. What we have observed, and I will answer your questions, in the evolutions of public service in municipalities, two periods, clearly two periods. In the first period, we've seen a rapid and constant transformation, modernization, sector by sector, service by service. For example, in the field of energy, we make a clear distinction between digital and technology, because we've seen a triple revolution: the digital revolution, technological revolution, and also cultural revolution. Digital has impacted all the sectors, and we've seen that. In the sector of energy, it is obvious in customer management. We have 23 million customers. In smart meters, to have an instant measure of the consumption, and smart grids, because now electricity is going in two ways. But we've seen also, and which is quite also important, a specific technological revolution in the energy, with special breakthroughs, such as in mobility, in storage, batteries, in photovoltaic, in wind, also in heating and cooling, micro heat pumps made a fantastic revolution, which is not well known than photovoltaic, and so the thermal sensors, which are now everywhere in order to monitor. And so in the first period, and we are somewhere still in that period, in many different cities. This evolution has increased the technology, and it is a technocentric period. Technocentric. So we have massive introduction of digital device platforms. I would say e-stuff everywhere, connected things. But at the end, this could be dangerous in a city because we don't know exactly where we go and what for. That's very important. And now we have a second approach. We have a separate, because something new is coming in the cities. It is the integration and the connection of all those techniques with, as we see here in Moscow, a supreme objective, a broader objective, simply the well-being of citizens. And that is the key of the solution for the future. The objective is to make the city not simply more digital because it's good to be digital, not digital for digital, but to make the city sustainable, collaborative, resilient, smart, pleasant to live in, comfortable, and also inclusive. And so this second approach creates sense and generates sense. This is what is happening here in Moscow. Have been very much impressed during the 3 years, and now we see the realization of that. But what the minister said, and what also the mayor said this morning, and we had occasion to discuss yesterday with business leaders, that's absolutely key. Now, this has to give the sense of the movement, and it is also the priority. You know, we have been discussing the relationship between big companies and municipalities. In the various examples we have, we use sometimes the concession type, where we make the investment on our balance sheet, or PPP. We can also take the investment in our balance sheet and being paid on a long period of time, or simply service contract O&M. With our experience, we do not consider that there is one dominant model which is better than the others. It depends on the willingness. But what is essential for the private sector is to understand, that was my lesson, that in every type of contract, the municipality decides and the private sector executes. There is this relationship. There is a boss, and the private sector executes. You can have different financial rules adapted to the will of the municipality, but this has to be the key. And finally, in the evolution, in the second period I was observing, in the second period, this is the rule of the politics and not of the technology. Politics have to have the last word, and technology has to be at the service of the political will. What do they want to do with their city and for their citizens?
It seems to me that it is very important what our colleague has mentioned already. The municipality makes the decision and the business is executing the decision together with the municipality. The decision which has been made, this kind of partnership, is a moving force which makes the interests between each other to synchronize and to get the results. But it seems to me that Moscow is a unique phenomenon, as the number of the written strategies how to develop cities. In every city, in every village, they are in place, but to move from the idea through the technology to the implementation and further perfection, that's what we see, Artem, in Moscow every day. And in this regard, I would like to ask the question about the security. Is it on the agenda of decision-making process, as on the one hand, as the professor said, there is a scarcity of the consumers to be controlled versus the comfort and the constant connection, constant being online, and there is equalizer, which is called security. As you want to keep your data private, even in data processing centers under control, and to make right decision. What about talking about the priorities of the security? Within the new strategy and the previous strategies, we really pay huge attention to the security, but we see the security in two different prospects. The security is the security of a person, of an object, is one story. Here we have the so-called CCTV camera, surveillance strategy, everything connected with the surveillance strategy. As talking about security, there is a huge buzzy topic about talking about the face recognition system, which has been mainly tested by us, the pilot project, and we understood how effective it is, as in big cities, in crowds of people. Maybe it's a World Cup. As an approach, we see the dangerous elements in FanFest areas before they have reached. This is the security of a person, as the wallet is in the pocket of the citizen. This security is a key factor from the perspective of human life and from the perspective of the data security. With the increase of information system and our independence, we are quite dependent on different computer attacks. For the city, we have huge number of information systems, so it has been a huge problem over the last years. In 2016, one attack per every 30 seconds, and now every 18 seconds. And this is a problem. Nevertheless, we always trying to lay on new technologies development, even the blockchain technologies, which allows us to restore our computing power on huge number of servers, on thousands of computers, allows us to solve this problem. The amount of investment in security is huge, but I'm saying that in this case, it is more beneficial for us to have partnership with, let's be Rostelecom or other stakeholders with whom we can share these costs and create new services based on that. Everything connected with the security, with the emergence of biometrics. This biometrics is a good thing, but it entails, and while this ultrasonic examination, so the volume of investment, and we have discussed this issue with Mr. Sabanin, who is the additional area in terms of the information digital development. With the smart city development, we are going to pay more attention to this kind of area development, but in this regard, it is very important to do it together. So the question to you, your statement, Mr. Dinder, smart security and then smart city, how is it implemented with the strategy of a big company, and where do you see the role of security which in smart city should play?
Well, security has many levels, just like technology and technology systems have multiple levels to support. If you think of, or if you would think about how security of information should be handled, then of course you will agree with me that any platform that sits underneath as a foundation to support the collection of data, the distribution of data, and the storage of that data should be stored and distributed and collected in such a way that it doesn't leak. If it leaks, that it means nothing to someone who looks at it. So the anonymization of data is key. And also new policies, with new business models and new economic viable situations like a smart city provides. You can also agree with me, I'm sure you will acknowledge that that should also provide new kind of policies and legislation and regulation that needs to be put in place. Technology has a tendency to be very fixed, to be very linear. It is coming out of the brain of a certain person, then it goes into a factory, and then there is a production process, and then there is a box. And this box is very square, so it's not holistic and not circular physically. But what I'm trying to say is the platforms that are being put in place should have a tendency to follow whatever regulation or policy comes by. And if you then look, and if you would then assess what kind of technology vendors or innovation partners, like the company I represent is, we are building our platforms on open standards. That's in line with what Mr. Artem was mentioning. We strongly believe that it should adhere to a philosophy which is in line with what Mr. Mikhail was saying. It should support citizens. It's very much in line with what Mr. Gerard and what Mr. Alexander were saying, because sometimes it had flaws, and these flaws need to be covered as well. So open standards, being able to follow processes that maybe are new, and that can follow those processes and can stick to those processes. That's exactly what we're about. The other thing I'd like to point out is If you look at security and safety in general, then within Huawei Technologies, that sits in our DNA. From the moment we start thinking in brainstorm sessions and groups of people that are working together to design solutions, build on input from different stakeholders that we speak to, then that is the starting point of also incorporating security and safety mechanisms from the start. We call this internally security by design or safety by design.
You know, it's very interesting that Huawei initially was known as a producer of devices and equipment, and within 20 years you have turned into a company which today has been developing the concept of smart cities and the connective devices. Moscow, for you, is it one of the cases which is interesting but not quite standing out, or there are more other perfect cities, or Moscow for you is the platform which can implement the most high-tech technologies to make a breakthrough and to become better? How do you see Moscow from the terms of the smart city development?
So you're bringing a number of questions into one set of lines. So let's start with the last one. What do I think of Moscow? I am very happy to be here for my 4th time in my life, to be honest, and sitting next to the designer of what today is what I think is the digital heart of Moscow. I think Moscow is very high up the value chain when it comes to digital infrastructure, having a digital baseline that supports.
The Moscow infrastructure supports Huawei.
Be that as it may, I don't think it is important whether it supports Huawei or not. What Huawei provides, if it's in there, is one of the many elements that allow such a digital infrastructure to blossom and bloom. But coming back to your last point, what do I think of Moscow? Moscow is very high up the value chain, and I think it's because of the investments also personally done by Mr. Artem and his team. In general, so on top of that, it's of course also the Moscow citizens. We already had in this roundtable discussion the comment going around that it has to be for people. The residents, not the citizens, I think, because from a very long history ago, we understand that citizen is excluding very much, and that's not what it should be about. Smart city is very hard to define. There is no definition that says, here is the definition of what a smart city is about. And that means it is everything, but it's also nothing. Smart city is nothing. There is no smart city. If you look at Google, or if you go to any dictionary, or if you go to a library or whatever, and you search for what is the meaning of smart, there's many definitions of smart. They don't apply to cities. Smart dressed man, they are all here at this table, does not apply to a smart dressed city. So there is no smart city. But what a smart city is I think also what we can all agree. It is a platform, it is a concept, it is a system that is linking the different programs and the different initiatives that allow a city to move higher up a value chain. I think that's a definition we can, or at least it's a thought we can agree on. And the second thing I think we can agree on, perhaps, and I'd like to have a discussion with you guys on that, is smart city, one smart city is not a smart city. One smart city should be linked to many other smart cities, because a network of smart cities create this digital transformational infrastructure that Mr. Artem and his team already have built for Moscow. So I agree with the other speakers that already have said that we should not replicate the faulties. We should learn from the errors that have been made here, and we should only replicate success and benefit, and we should replicate the value of things. And that can only be done if we agree that one smart city is not a smart city. All smart cities combined together maybe is a smart city.
There was a concept of smart country which was voiced by Singapore, but the country is very close to the city size. This is the question of the scale.
Singapore is a city. It's a city.
And this is the debate talking about the scale. So the movement of a citizen in the city and the communication of the devices. We don't have the financial system. We wouldn't have some comfortable environment. I would like to address to the bank representative and to ask them a question. So how we have got used today. In Moscow, you got up to the metro register and you pay with your smartwatches. If you want, you can have your Apple wallet, smart wallet. You have different other kinds to pay by Troika card, which you can charge in many ways, the way you like. And here, the Moscow just give up the special register system, as we do believe our citizens and the citizens can learn how to be disciplined in this approach. But behind these is a huge financial flows and financial services provided by the bank. So Vladimir Zotov, VTB Bank. So you've been working with a number of areas for development of the transactional services. Could you give the mic, please? Vadim, you're working with the development of transaction services, and you've seen the evolution of these services, both in demand and the opportunities provided by the bank to offer such kind of services, which is in more demand and what's going to see tomorrow. Thank you, Olga, for your question. It's true, this is the power of a huge business, that we see the broad picture, as we have the partners in transportation, in IT, in retail sector. And that's why the current model we're talking about, that the city gives the opportunities and we are executing these opportunities, it's quite clear to me and more comfortable when we have the supply and the client with the current regulation in place. We can anticipate those demands and needs which are going to be in place in a particular period of time. Talking about the Moscow Central Ring, we started to use these wireless smartphone apples. Together now we are combining with the department of the city these opportunities provided by them. We are creating special front for all the citizens, Muscovites, in the mobile app. And the major problem, this standardized interface in terms of the technology development, as every entity has a different interface, and we can standardize these interfaces for the city, for the smart city, and then it is easier to share these technologies, which is a very good topic, Artem. So how many mobile applications should be handled by a Muscovite if he uses by different Moscow services, from the doctor appointment to the metro payment fare? Is it one marketplace? Is it one application? Is it monopolization or standardization? Or there might be different applications in particular ecosystem, but there is a huge number of that because you find lost yourself in these applications. So at the period of time, talking about the flows which we made, I do believe that we shouldn't decide for the Muscovite. Muscovite is going to choose by himself. Our task is to give the opportunity to the Muscovite to make use of the opportunity to pay through the banking online app, to any application, even cleaner's application. It depends on the comfort provided by this application. The city should give the opportunity to be the gateway to any phone, to any person.
And further on, the citizen opts for what is natural to them. So it is a myth, I believe, that we can come up with one application that would have it all. It will be truly hard, and that will be a really very complex system where certain social benefits will be incorporated, and transportation payment, and school kid diary. So that will be a really heavyweight app, and the user will break it up, split it up anyway. So our task is to provide options of our services and provide it for the citizens.
Yes, I think we have to make a distinction, and you are right, between some digital services which quite necessarily are country-based payments, or international, say WhatsApp, so it's not completely in the hands of the city, but the city has a lot to do and is doing so. I would like to give the example of a small French city called Dijon, in the middle of the wines. 50,000 people, so it's much smaller than Moscow or Paris. But it is one of the most sophisticated and advanced examples of intelligent urban programs. And they have launched, the mayor and the municipality have launched a bid for an integrated control command center by the convergence of all the technologies. and Suez in the consortium won the bid. And it is covering 12 different public services: street lighting, geolocalization of vehicles, traffic lights, CCTVs, citizen information by iPhone and connected street screens. And the objective is to facilitate the day-to-day life of the citizens by an intelligent combination of all the digital services and technology equipments and big data, but focused on what is linked with the responsibilities of the municipality. And so that's very important, interesting, and for us it has been what we have seen of the most advanced. Is it possible to extend it on a mega city? That's the question.
What's your view on that?
Well, I'm very much in favor of that view, because one of the solution stacks in Huawei is called Safe City. A Safe City solution is doing exactly that, what Mr. Gerard is mentioning here. I don't think we are part of the Dijon solution in this case, but I think I see parallels, many parallels. The idea of putting in place an intelligent operations center, almost like a heart, or maybe like a centralized nervous system or a brain of a city, is something that Huawei provides and advocates, linking different services and different systems, making them work as one, regardless of someone's device, regardless of someone's application, regardless of someone's background. Maybe this is not, in the example of Moscow or Russia, maybe this is someone who is not from Russia, coming to Russia, who is using Line every day or Telegram every day, which is not able to be used in Moscow. So what then to do? Do we transfer applications, or do we flip back and forth between applications? So the integration and interoperability part sits very high up within technology to support. And I think Dijon is a perfect example. Other than you guys have great mustard as well, of course. Mustard of Dijon.
Ну, вы знаете, наша сессия подходит к концу. Осталось...
Our session is coming to its end. 5 or 8 minutes are left, and I would ask our key panelists, and I will start with Professor Alexander Auzan, to tell me the following. If you are responsible for the next step in digital services development in Moscow, we can call it a smart city or smart service or anything, and you have no restrictions, no limitations, what would you put forward for Moscow as a new digital service? You know, Russian internet has such a joke. My girlfriend has suggested talking about the future, and it took me 20 minutes to speak about blockchain and other technologies, but it seems to me that she meant something different. So what it seems to me now is that we are now in euphoria of digitalization, and then something different will happen. And technologies very rarely can solve social issues. So I believe that Moscow should focus more on social infrastructure of dialogues and agreements, not only with single companies. And I agree with what Mr. Minister has said. It is sound, and the triple win scheme is working, is operating. But if we want business and government to deal with the whole environment, not with separate cases, we have to come up with platforms. And not only negotiation platform, but we have to have governing companies with split responsibilities. And I believe it's a time of institutions in this sphere. And that is the next step, projects that would give a great technical effect. Mikhail? I truly believe that a biometric platform that we are launching all together will change our life. And I believe that tangible monetary sources will be eliminated in virtue of cards or anything else. And we will be automatically identified and the money will be withdrawn from our bank accounts automatically. But there are some more real things. We have agreed with the Bolshoi Theater and we have piloted it in the Hermitage to arrange the system of direct access to all guests of the Hermitage with a preliminary registration so that they can enter fast without any ticket gates or anything else. And I believe that this will be scaled up in Moscow, and that will include transport pay and so on and so forth. Anna, Megaphone, what is your dream? Limitless budget and limitless opportunities. Our dream, I believe, is to come up with really convenient remote services. That can be like remote medical examination for all those willing, if we talk about telemedicine. Or if we're talking about environment, that will be echo monitoring for every person on their smartphone. Like you track the weather, you would be also able to track the environmental safety parameters. And that is not a future far ahead. Sveta from Tele2, what about your dreams? Thank you. And you have 2 minutes. I will be faster as I have a chance to speak here among one of the last, having heard representatives of businesses and governments and science. What I now think about is that future is already here, though it is not evenly distributed, and our task is to distribute it evenly, coming up with the necessary platforms. And there is a lot of work to be done here, and that is 4G and also connection of remote areas that are not yet connected. And we also have a task to develop our analytics faster. And my dream is to grow more and faster here to be able to make our contribution. Around 18 months ago, our IT experts and us argued how to use measure data monthly and even daily. And it is really developing fast. But the most important thing is not to analyze for the sake of analysis, but do it all for the sake of the people. And I was happy to hear that all the colleagues say that smart city should cater for the interests of the citizens, first of all. Cities change so fast that there are constantly new needs and tasks for operators. And they say that in the near 30 years, 2/3 of global population will live in the cities, whether we want it or not. And in the perimeter of the city, we need to track and trace all these changes to be able to come up with a comfortable life for citizens. And what is your dream? The dream is to start working not only with Moscow government, but with the regions to implement something that we are implementing now. There is a new block of flats, for example, constructed, and people start moving in, and operators are one of the first to see that more parking spaces, more transportation are needed. What would you suggest, Edwin, what Moscow should dream of?
What to put in place if we had no restrictions? Maybe no technology, because that's only bringing you down. No, that would be too short. We honestly think and we honestly believe that the digital divide can be easily bridged by creating, next to the physical economy, a digital economy. It is not me saying this very enthusiastically because I believe in it. There are many analyst organizations and reports out there from the United Nations, World Economic Forum, that are showing that a 0.1% investment in digital transformation or in transforming digital economies will make a 2.2 or even more percentage of digital value. It is adding to urban development, public safety. It is adding to social inclusion. It is adding to employability and economics. It is creating jobs. Not because technology takes jobs away from people that today do regular jobs and computing power can take that from them. What I mean by that is computing power can make their job more efficient, more productive by supporting those jobs and doing that in a more efficient manner. That is what technology should provide. Bringing digital to everybody for everything and everyone, I think, is a process that we're going through, and linking the physical economy with the digital economy, like in Estonia as an example, creates a digital society that allows people to be included and not be excluded, because physically it is just not possible to create more roads that will finally reach a small village where 3,000-4,000 people are living, so children can take the school bus, where digitally they maybe already are connected. So e-education, e-learning, and the same goes then for telemedicine, teleconsult, smart and e-health solutions. Social and digital inclusion gives them a digital identity, and as such, make them part of the society. That's, I think, what we should strive for.
Спасибо. Месье Жижа, о чем мечтаете?
Monsieur Gérard, what do you dream of?
You know, on top of my responsibility of a businessman, I chair the foundation. This is a foundation against exclusion. It's the largest social foundation in France, which gathers 6,000 companies, and the members are companies willing to help people and to fight against exclusion. And you've mentioned, and I heard it for the first time, the word inclusion. That's absolutely key. In the development of the mega cities, with the intense use of digital, the real challenge will be to have this progress equal for all. And if we look at what happened in the past 30 years, growth and globalization have let too many people on the side, and this has led to crisis and to populism. And the fantastic development of the cities requires a strong attention from the mayors, the municipalities, in order to avoid that divide between people benefiting from all those technologies and people living aside. So inclusion, the challenge of inclusion, will be my priority.
Артем,
Artyom, I'm putting it all down. But everything has been recorded. We are online. So what about your dreams? My dreams are really simple, easy, and primitive, I would say, because all these artificial intelligence applications and biometrics serve for Muscovites, so that Muscovites would be able to create the city that they need, so that can be individual, healthcare, education, transportation, and leisure, and let Muscovites do it the way they wish. So our task is to provide them with the instrument to create the city that they want to live in, no matter whether it is a Muscovite or a foreign. And by the way, congratulations on your victory in the World Cup. Let us wish good luck and success to Artyom, his team, Moscow government, and all those who deal with the smart cities development, all our partners and students that believe that they would challenge everyone who are implementing this task today for one large goal of living in one good, convenient, comfortable, and safe space. Thank you all, colleagues, for working in this session. Thank you very much.